It's state championship weekend, part one. We'll have the details next on Prep Rally.
You're watching the Prep Rally Podcast.
Welcome to the Prep Rally Podcast, sponsored by West Termite Pest and Lawn. Graham Thomas and Rick Fires here on the set in Northwest Arkansas. Leland Barclay joins us from the River Valley Democrat-Gazette offices in Fort Smith. Guys, it's state championship weekend in Little Rock. 5 state title games beginning Thursday with the 8-man championship, the 2A and 5A on Friday, and the 6A and 7A on Saturday. Ricky Fires, you're ready, aren't you?
Absolutely, I'm ready, man. How can you not love this? We got state champ. You know, we start talking about, hey, who's going to win this class? Who's going to? Well, you know what? It's on us right now. Then we got some semifinals in the other division, college football conference championships this weekend, basketball tournaments all over the place. Man, I'm just giddy. I'm like a little puppy. I'm ready to go.
And Leland's always ready. How you doing down there, man?
Well, a little cold today, but yes, absolutely. 5 games at War Memorial Stadium in Little Rock, and it is the pinnacle of high school football in the state of Arkansas this week.
Now, I said part one, so part 2 is next week with the Class 3A and 4A games. So it's always an
I
exciting
love the setup that they went to a couple of years ago, and of course that kind of changed when they started the 8-man. I love the setup. The 8-man game is always on Thursday night. The 2A game is always on that first Friday in December. And then 5, 6, and 7, Class 5A, 6A, and 7A kind of rotate between Friday night, noon Saturday, and then that night game on Saturday night. So I love that format. And then the next weekend, like you said, part 2, it's a doubleheader. 3A and 4A, they alternate. This year 4A's at noon, 3A's at night. And it's a championship doubleheader next weekend.
And I don't know about you guys, but I still love War Memorial. I mean, I the old lady.
I do too.
She's a real classic, and I love covering football games there. I like watching the Razorbacks play there. When that place is rocking, there's nowhere like it. It's so loud.
You know what? It's centrally located. It's named in honor of the military, the men and women who keep us safe. And I love it, too. There's nothing better to me, and I remember Harrison and Alma years ago playing at a beautiful noon about this time of year. It was just a gorgeous day. I love those Saturday noon games because at nighttime, we're on deadline trying to get everything done. But, man, those noon games at War Memorial on Saturdays are perfect.
All right. Well, I'd love to jump right into those state championship games. But first, let's stick to the script, gentlemen. We have to. Just this one more time, I guess, or however many more times we're going to do this. But let's start with Gimme 5 this week. Leland, take it away.
These are the top 5 performances of the last week in the River Valley. Of course, we always start with number 1, the River Valley Democrat-Gazette Player of the Week. It's a familiar name. In fact, all these names are familiar because this is the time of the year that the cream rises to the top. And, of course, Daniel Burton, senior wingback for Mansfield, the all-time leading rusher in Mansfield history. In last week's 36-6 win over Dumas, 11 carries, 170 yards, 3 touchdowns on runs of 4, 94, and 49 yards in that victory to propel Mansfield into the state semifinals in Class 3A for the second straight season.
Well, I'll tell you what. The funniest thing in a staff meeting yesterday, someone was referencing one of the articles we had on that game, and they were calling Dumas Dumas. And someone said, "Oh, it's Dumas."
It's not in France. It's Dumas. I live down there, and it's just Dumas.
The Burton boys, and we got more coming here. Obviously, spoiler alert, but man, Daniel Burton's had such a great career at Mansfield, and kind of fitting for him to be, a player of the week this late in the year, Leland.
Yes, it is. He's a wingback, tremendous player, plays on both sides of the ball. An interesting fact about him, and we'll have more on him and his family. He's they have 4 adopted brothers in that family. A couple of weeks ago after their big win, he actually preached the sermon the next day or that Sunday morning at his church on Sunday morning.
Wow. Tell you what, that's impressive.
So great family. And to keep that, same nice segue, number two, Samuel Burton, 11 carries for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns in that win over Dumas, 36-6. And he's the wing back on the opposite side. And I thought Harold's story today was just fantastic in pointing out some things about their offense. They do so much with those wing backs. They do pitches with them. They also run those counters, and it is old school wing T offense. And they've got that tough running back or tough fullback in the middle of that offense, Andrew Burton, and they're clicking right now. Number three, the 1-2 punch. Again, familiar names, Champ Davis and Grant Carnes, the receiving tandem for Greenwood. In last week's 42-0 win over Mountain Home, they caught all 5 of the touchdown passes in the first half, or 5 of the touchdown passes in the first half from Kane Archer. Grant Carnes, 3 catches, all for touchdowns for 114 yards. Champ Davis, 7 catches for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's the third time in the last 4 games that they've both went over 100 yards receiving in the same game.
That's tough to beat when they're like that.
Yeah, that's a tough 1-2 combination. Boy, they both they're having great seasons. Both of them were over 1,000 yards. And then number 4, Kane Archer, the junior quarterback for Greenwood, 17 of 20 for 306 yards and 5 touchdowns, all in the first half. He also had a 20-yard touchdown run that was just a highlight reel run. And then, of course, he's got 54 touchdown passes now for the season and 1 interception.
How many incompletions?
Well, it would be 49 or 48 incompletions and then the 1 interception. So he has more touchdown passes than he has, incompletions. And he also he's completing 82% of his passes, which would be a state record. And also, from what I can find, the research I've done would also be a national record. Now, I don't like to point a lot of that stuff out because the season's not over. And, of course, we'll get into this later, but Shiloh's defense is going to have something to say about that on Saturday afternoon.
We'd have to
And
go.
then number 5.
I was going to say, we'd have to go back and look on Kane Archer, but, at the beginning of the year, we said he could probably be on this list every week for the Gimme 5. And I wonder how many weeks was Kane Archer listed on Gimme 5? That'd be fun.
Well, of course, I've got all of them because, as my wife would say, I don't ever throw anything away.
You'll have to report back.
I mean, there were some weeks that we purposely, I think, tried to keep him out.
But he still probably could have been on there. Maybe
he probably could have.
Maybe
if
the
you
week
look back
he
at
didn't
these
play against
games,
Shiloh.
right. I mean, just tremendous, games all season long. 6 touchdown passes, 7 touchdown passes, 8 touchdown passes, 2 weeks in a row with 5 in the playoffs. So I mean, yeah, he could have been on there every week if we wanted to.
We could have been doing the same thing with Jeff Regan up there at Rogers too.
Yeah, right. I agree with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of familiar names on our top 5 from up there and our Gimme 5. And then number 5, Hunter Warren in last week's 34-26 loss at Fordyce, the Booneville junior fullback, had 32 carries for 193 yards, 4 touchdowns, and as a linebacker on defense, had 8 tackles in that tough loss for Booneville in the playoffs last week on the road.
That was a tough loss for the Bearcats, but give them a lot of props. They were right back in it this year. They were a team to be reckoned with. Had that game been at Booneville, there might have been a different story.
Oh, absolutely. And with what they lost last week or from last year, state championship team from last year, 2 of the best players to ever play for Booneville, graduated. So I think for them to get to this point was really an amazing season. And it also speaks, I think, very appropriately of the Booneville program itself in that, they don't really relapse. They just reload.
Yep, I agree with that. And each week now we've kind of seen teams have their season end, and this past week was no exception, and it's going to end for a few this week as well, just because it is the final game, and these teams have reached the final game. So with that, Leland, we'll move into the River Valley Sports Report, and I imagine we're just going to lead right off with the Class 6A title game with Greenwood and Shiloh.
Absolutely. Greenwood will be playing in their um, state record 18th state championship game on Saturday afternoon against Shiloh Christian, a familiar foe. Greenwood's coming off that 42-0 win over Mountain Home. That is their third straight shutout and fourth of the season.
That's
I know we give a lot of notoriety and publicity to the offense, and rightly so, because that's what everybody likes to see. But man, that defense has been fantastic. And I've got a story. I talked to Paul Brixey on Friday night, a 5'10", 190-pound linebacker who's leading the team in tackles, who played very seldom last year. He was one of the guys that came in. They only had 3 returning starters on defense. Now, all 3 of those were really good players, but still returning or replacing 9 starters on defense. And guys like Paul Brixey step up, and, well, here they are again playing for a state title with an unbelievable defense. And then on Friday night, the 3A semifinals at Mansfield, where the Tigers will host, coming to town on Friday night, a very, very good Salem team, kind of a mirror image, both teams in the semifinals. And one of those teams will go to the championship game for the first time in their school history.
That's
That's
amazing.
cool.
I've been to Salem and I've been to Mansfield. That's a long trip for Salem.
Well,
They
and
might as well leave today.
unusual fact about Mansfield, Mansfield actually is in Sebastian County and Scott County, but the school is actually in Scott County. Most of the town is in Sebastian County. So if you've been to Mansfield, you've been to Scott County as well.
So
Basketball,
will the
3
Salem
tournaments going
Grove?
on this week at Lavaca, Boonville, and Scranton. Classic formats. Lavaca is a true tournament. And then next week, the Tournament of Champions in Fort Smith. And then the week after that is the Foster Roofing Classic, the old Coca-Cola Christmas Classic. So basketballs are bouncing everywhere. It has taken off, and it's for most schools, it's basketball season.
Hey, Leland, did you say Greenwood has now appeared in more championship games than anybody, including those Little Rock Central teams?
Yes, well, of course, Little Rock Central played in the Big School Conference, so
Yeah.
they weren't actually a part of the playoff format until
Oh, oh, I
1983.
see.
This is
That's
going
right.
back to the modern playoff format, which began in 1968. And most of the big schools didn't join the current playoff format
I
until
see.
1983 as far as the big schools.
Okay.
But yes, they have played in more championship games than anybody in the state.
That's why I'm here to be educated by Leland.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, that's a great, interesting stat right there.
But you know you're going to get a
Well,
history
I think
lesson.
again, we had kind of a geography lesson today, about Mansfield and Scott County.
Here's what I remember about Salem. When I worked at the Jonesboro Sun, I would have to drive over to Salem for our football tab. I couldn't believe that we delivered papers out
Way
there.
out
but we
there,
did.
yep.
But as you're getting into Salem, there was a Dairy Queen out there. Like you just kind of have just a lot of mountains and
Yeah.
nothing, and then boom, Dairy Queen. It's like yes.
So, do the Salem Greyhounds travel by Greyhound bus?
They should. If
I
they're-
would think so. Yeah, they ought to, sponsor them or something.
Now I want to point out too here, Leland. In the quarterfinals last year, Mansfield, a part of their run to the state semifinals, went up to Salem and beat the Greyhounds on their home field.
That is correct. That was part of that playoff run, and then the next week they went to Prescott. Mansfield went to Prescott and lost in the semifinals. But yes, part of that run was a 1 touchdown decision over Salem. So this is a rematch from last year, and of course this one's much bigger because, like I said, one of these teams is going to War Memorial Stadium to play for a state title for the first time ever.
Well, and we'll have all kinds of coverage from it in the River Valley Democrat-Gazette. on Friday before the game, on Saturday after the game, and on Sunday in our print and online editions. So looking forward to that. We could talk about that one for another 30 to 45 minutes, I'm sure, but we got to take a break, guys. We got to, and then we'll get to our Northwest Arkansas top 5. As we go to break, we'll leave you with some video highlights from last week's football games in the River Valley. This is Prep Rally. Welcome back to the Prep Rally Podcast, sponsored by West Termite Pest and Lawn. Graham Thomas and Rick Fires here on the set in Fayetteville Studios here, and Leland Barclay joins us in the River Valley. So let's jump into the top 5 with Rick Fires. Rick, what you got for us this week?
I tell you what, I don't have a lot of stats on this guy. My number one story is Bentonville beating Conway 36-34. You know, and the game is more than stats, about drama. You know, I'm an old country music kind of guy, but hey, I know a little rap too. And Eminem talks about what you're gonna do in the moment. And this guy right here, Ryan Fernstrom, kicked a 37-yard field goal, 1 second to go, to allow Bentonville to beat Conway 36-34. What a pressure-packed situation that is. My goodness. And you know what? I was at that game. They had to rush the field goal team onto the field. It's not like, you know, he just got a timeout and walk. It probably helped him that he didn't have to think about it.
They just had to line up and kick it. It was
he
fun
just
to watch it.
lined up. And it wasn't, I almost said drilled. He didn't drill it, but he made it. It kind of looped over the crossbar, set off pandemonium for Bentonville. What a great win for them. A lot of people had Conway and Bryant in the state championship game. Bentonville said, no way. Bentonville's going back for the 3rd straight year to play for the state championship. And you need to think about this game is, you know, teams get better. Conway beat the Tigers 55-21 during week 1 of this season. And then 11 games later, they turn around and beat them. Trevor Grant had really the Bentonville quarterback. You know, a lot of attention was on Grayson Wilson. He's a University of Arkansas signee, good-looking kid. He's about 6'3". He can fling it. He can run. But Trevor Grant did a great job directing that team. They had some defensive stops. You don't, like Leland points out, you know, I complain about all the high scoring, but Leland points out, you know, you still win championships with defense. And Bentonville made some key defensive stops there. Got a touchdown off a return, a fumble return for a touchdown. So to me, that was by far the number one story right there in Northwest Arkansas last week. My player of the week is, you talking about a kid who's having a fantastic year. That's Aiden Lester, the Magic Man. That's what Tommy Tice calls him, the Magic Man. I remember this kid was a sophomore, and he was playing behind another the starting quarterback got hurt, and Aiden kind of went in there and got better and better. And his junior year, he's just doing a fantastic. Farmington's one of the hottest teams in high school football right now in Arkansas. His team was behind, but he rallied Farmington to 59-55 victory, and he threw for 422 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game. And he was best in the second half. He completed 15 of his last 16 passes for 209 yards and 4 scores, including the game winner. So what a great job by Aiden Lester. Of course, you got to have somebody to catch the ball. Dawson Keaton for Farmington had caught 12 passes, 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now move on to Elkins. Elkins beat Malvern. Jaquay Walden, 31 carries, 211 yards. 4 touchdowns. Ben Napier had another big game. Excuse me. Shiloh Christian, man, they surprised some people. Went down there and beat Benton. Griffin Mason, Shiloh, he ran for a touchdown. I think caught 2 touchdown passes. Threw a touchdown pass This kid does a little bit of everything. He's punted. He was outside linebacker, but now he's the feature back, and they just want him as the running back, so he doesn't play linebacker anymore. He said he's disappointed in that. He loved to hit people. But Shiloh Christian, again, you know, they've got a great tradition as well, and they're going back to when a lot of people didn't think they'd be there. They'll be playing in the state championship game this weekend. So great job by a lot of these kids up here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, going back to that Farmington game, they weren't just down; they were really down. I was on vacation last week. Thank you guys for
Let's
covering
see
on the
if I can-
podcast. They were down like
I think
48 to 30.
48-30, that's what it was, late in the third quarter.
I mean,
To late
you,
si-
you start
yeah.
thinking it's over. You know, that's what I thought. I just
Yeah.
kind of like, well, Farmington's had a great year. Tommy Tice has done a great job, and all of a sudden, I get messages. Farmington came back and won. I'm like, whoa.
And, you know, they had to do a lot of things, had to go right for them. They recovered 2 onside kicks. You had to get the extra possession. And Tommy Tice calls this a magical team led by a magical quarterback. And it's hard to argue that right there. So great job by Farmington and Aiden Lester, our Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette Player of the Week.
Well, and that kind of leads us into a great segue into our sports report. So Farmington is going to play Little Rock Parkview, a heavily favored Little Rock Parkview team in the state finals. But I like what Tommy Tice said in the newspaper. He goes, I know that Little Rock Parkview is a good team, but we got a good team too, and they've shown that. And you can't keep them out of it. And my goodness, what a year they have had. Aiden Lester has just had a great year. They've got a lot of great performances around him. You know,
Russell Hodge.
Russell
great-
Hodge,
yep.
Dawson Keating, Aiken Johnson.
Yeah.
What I've liked a lot, whenever we've talked to Tommy Tice this year about on the capsules that we do, you always list the punter. So, because we might need him, is what he said. So
I like when Tommy Tice referenced, you know, a lot of people had, I think our Little Rock guys had Parkview #1 overall for the longest in their weekly ranking. And Tommy Tice referenced that Arkansas game where they had some guys suspended. Oklahoma was a big favorite in one of them bowl games, and Arkansas just whipped them. So you never know. That's what sports is all about.
absolutely, that's why you play the game, and we'll see Parkview and Farmington go at it on Friday night. And believe me, Farmington will be ready. They'll have a plan, and they'll have a great game plan, and they're going to take a swing at Parkview, just like a lot of teams have tried to do this year. Another, we mentioned Elkins here on the top 5. Elkins is going to have to make the trip to Little Rock a week early to go play a really good Little Rock Mills team. This is kind of the moment here for Elkins. Can they get over the hump? Can they get over the hump and get to War Memorial? So we'll find out this week, Rick.
So they was 13-0 last year when who was it? Harding Academy.
Mhm.
They're 13-0. Little Rock Mills undefeated. I talked to Zach Watson over there. He said, "Man, they got some great athletes. We can't let them bust some of them big plays, punt returns, kickoff returns." So, but man, I've seen Elkins 2 or 3 times this year. They are a solid team, and really looking forward to the results of that game.
Yep. And then, obviously Bentonville's going to have to play a really great Bryant team in the Class 7A state finals. Now, Bentonville is the team that ended Bryant's season at Bryant last year. And I don't think that won't be on the Hornets' mind, but, Bryant's a really good team. We know that. Bentonville knows that. But I'm telling you, like you talked about last week, Rick, this Bentonville team is kind of come together like this. I mean, they took their lumps early, but they got better, and they kind of figured out who they are, and now they're figuring out ways to win ball games.
And they make plays on defense too. I mean, just a little bitty things like who was it? Grayson Wilson gets sacked, and a Bentonville cornerback runs over there and gets in front of the other offensive guys and picked up the football and runs all the way back for, I can't remember, 43, 50 something yards. And that's what it takes this time of year.
Yep. So, that's kind of, we got the 5A and then the 7A. We talked about that. Now, I don't want to discount Shiloh at all, man. They went down to Benton and won. What a great performance.
I didn't think,
like you talked about Griffin Mason, Zane Slider, Jake Bodenstein. Nathan Bodenstein, I think is his uncle. Jake Bodenstein, comes off the bench and after Cole Creighton got hurt and makes some plays at quarterback, and they won at Benton. I mean, that's a tough place to go and win.
Hey, let me ask you, which would be a bigger upset? Shiloh Christian beating Greenwood or Bentonville beating Bryant?
Or Farmington beating Parkview. Leland, you might want to weigh in on that one.
Which one do you think, Leland?
I think that it's easily Farmington beating Parkview would be the biggest of the three.
I tend to agree because Bentonville has shown it can beat Bryant. They did it last year. Shiloh played Greenwood really tough earlier, and you guys were there for it.
Yes.
So
Yep.
we just don't know about Parkview and Farmington, but boys, we're going to find out. And and if you can't make it to War Memorial, it's so great in Arkansas. If you have the public broadcasting system, PBS, all these games are broadcast on TV. And then we'll have all kinds of stories about them in the Northwest
You'll be there.
Arkansas.
There's nothing like being there, isn't it?
Oh, man, it's fun. And Leland will be
Leland
there.
Be there.
And I know Walter Woody will be there for some of it, and it's just a great time. So real quick here, just to wrap up our Northwest Arkansas sports report, got a couple of big basketball tournaments up here. We got basketball tournaments all over the
place.
But in Northwest Arkansas this week, we have the Rogers Grade 8, which is going to be, I believe, at Rogers Heritage this year. And that's a girls' tournament. So local teams in that are Rogers and Heritage. North Little Rock will be there. Greene County, a really good Greene County Tech, who's coached by my good buddy Jason Smith, will be there. Clinton, Arkansas will be there. Ozark, Missouri, defending Arkansas state champion Little Rock Central will be there too. And then, Rick, you'll be at the Hoopin' on the Hill in Fayetteville. So that's boys. And you'll have Bentonville will be there. Fayetteville will be there. Bryant, defending 4A champ Little Rock Christian will be there. So a lot of good teams from out of the area are coming in
Vashon,
too.
Is that St. Louis Vashon?
Mm-hmm.
That is a big time program in the St. Louis area. They play good basketball.
So Rick and Paul Boyd will be here manning a lot of the basketball stuff. So it's just busy. It's a lot of people haven't made the jump to basketball season just yet, but still got some really good football left, and man, maybe even next week we'll have some more of it. We'll see. I hope
We're in transition, like we transition from Thanksgiving. I'm not listening to no Christmas music till Thanksgiving's over. Now I'm all about Christmas music and deck the halls and being jolly and all that. So just like sports, we're making transition from football to basketball.
What is your favorite Christmas song, Rick?
The Little Drummer Boy by the Mormon
kidding.
Tabernacle Choir. It brings me to tears. I love that. I just do.
All right. Well, guys, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll do Who You Got for all the state championship games plus the semifinals in the 2A, or excuse me, the 3A and the 4A. This is Prep Rally. And we're back on the Prep Rally podcast, sponsored by West Termite Pest and Lawn. And gentlemen, it's time for Who You Got. So let's get right to it. We will start with the 8-man championship game between Strong and Midland. Rick Fires, who you got, 8-man?
I'm going to go with Strong. I saw them play years ago up at Mountainburg, one of the best games I've ever seen. Kenneth Dixon was the quarterback, halfback, running back, tailback, offensive guard, did everything. He later went on a great career at Louisiana Tech, played in the NFL with Baltimore for a few years. So I'm going with Strong.
I got Strong, too. Leland, who you got?
Absolutely. Strong Huddig with the I think they would have probably won it last year. Maybe not. But if they hadn't have had to have forfeited that game in the playoffs, which knocked them out of the playoffs, I think they would have made it 2 in a row. But, yes, I think Strong wins this game.
And Leland will be there for 8-man coverage. Read about it in the Friday Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Class 2A state title game, East Poinsett County versus Conway Christian. So I'm an old-school Northwest Arkansas guy. Rick Fires, I know you are too, but I'll take EPC.
I'm a Northeast Arkansas. I'm a transplant to Northwest Arkansas. East Poinsett County is a consolidated school with Lepanto and Tyronza. It's the home of the Great Terrapin Derby and my birthplace, like 90 years ago. So I got East Poinsett County.
Leland, who you got? Class 2A.
Oh, it's got to be the home of Rick Fires,
East Point.
East Poinsett County.
Well, I just born there because Caraway didn't have a hospital, and we couldn't find a midwife, so that's why I was born in Lepanto.
Oh, very interesting. All
Not
right.
really.
Class 3A semifinals. All right, we're going to go Salem at Mansfield. Our local teams, I mean, guys, I can't go against Mansfield now. It's just they've been through too much and done so much. Mansfield Tigers. Rick, who you got?
Mansfield Tigers.
Leland, who you got?
You know, we've said Class 3A was open all year, wide open, and so why not? Mansfield Tigers.
You've been riding them the whole way, so no surprise
Absolutely.
there. Now, the question is, who are they going to play in Little Rock? So the other Class 3A semifinal game, the Fordyce, the Red Bugs, who just ended the Booneville Bearcat season, going to play the Bismarck Lions. Who you got, Rick?
I got Fordyce with the spirit of Paul Bear Bryant back in the Red Bugs, and so I got Fordyce.
I'm going to go Bismarck. You know, Bismarck defeated Mansfield first game of the year, I believe it was. So I know they're a good football team. I'll take Bismarck. Leland, who you got?
You know, when I was talking to Booneville coach Doc Crowley last week, and getting something ready for the notebook, and we talked about Fordyce, and he said they were the best team left in the playoffs, and that was last week. So I'm going with the Red Bugs to meet Mansfield in the state championship game at War Memorial Stadium next week.
Man, I've always loved the Red Bugs mascot.
I love that town.
All right, Class 4A semifinals. We'll start with not our local teams, but Batesville Southside at Arkadelphia. Boy, the Badgers at home. I just don't know if I can pick against Arkadelphia at home, so I'll take the Arkadelphia Badgers to win.
I'll take Arkadelphia as well.
All right, Leland, who you got?
Ditto, Arkadelphia.
Man, we're all on the same page here mostly. The Class 4A semifinals, Elkins at Little Rock Mills. Leland, why don't you lead us off on this one?
Man, this is a tough one to pick. Mills, of course, Elijah Moody, freshman quarterback, son of former coach Maurice Moody. Man, he is having such a good year, but I just think Elkins and the experience they had last year, I think they get it done. And I think Elkins moves on to a state championship game next weekend.
Rick Fires, who you got?
I've been riding Elkins like Leland has been riding Mansfield. I'm still with my Elks.
Just so that we're not going to have everybody picking the same here, I'm going to go Mills. Give Elkins a little something to inspire them and know that, but definitely rooting for Elkins.
Well, I'm going to, if they need to, I'm going to tell them your address, where you eat at, where you go to lunch at, where you sleep at. So I'm just fair warning.
Hopefully they pay the tab. All right. Class 5A, Little Rock Parkview versus Farmington. Gentlemen, it's been a great run for Farmington and Coach Tommy Tice, and I think won't be the last time they end up in the state championship game. But the magic ends on Friday night. I just think Parkview. I'm one of those guys that's had Parkview number one for a long. I don't have them number one anymore, but I had them number one at the beginning of the year. So Parkview, I'll take Parkview over Farmington. Rick, who you got?
You know what? Tommy Ty's been talking about magical year. If they win, I want some of that magic. Back it up. I'll pay for it. If Farmington wins this game, I want some of that magic.
Leland, who you got?
Cinderella can only dance so long. It's a great story. Tom Tice comes out of retirement, goes back to War Memorial Stadium. Just a fantastic story for the Cardinals. But, man, the Patriots are just, they're so tough. And this 3-year class, this group of seniors they have, I think they complete the three-peat with the championship win on Friday night.
All right. Greenwood versus Shiloh Christian, Class 6A. It's going to be Saturday at noon, War Memorial Stadium. That noon game you talked about, Rick Fires, it is fun with the bright sunshine in Little Rock. Hopefully it's good weather. Guys, with as much respect as I can tell you to Shiloh Christian, Greenwood is just on a mission. and they complete the mission on Saturday. Rick, who you got?
Now, when I was talking to Coach Barnard for Shiloh Christian, I said, "Man, you guys played them tougher than anybody." He said, "Yeah, I keep hearing that, but we got to play them tougher than that." He said, "We got to do everything a little bit better," and they probably will. But man, Greenwood, they may be the premier football program in Arkansas. So I got to go with Greenwood.
All right, Leland. Probably no surprise on who you got.
Well, and it was a very close game the first time. Greenwood's played 12 games. They have outscored their opponents in the first half 490 to 69. They have 11 Mercy Rule wins in their 12 wins. The one game that was not a Mercy Rule was against Shiloh Christian.
Mm-hmm.
But last week in the win at Benton, Shiloh Christian won 45-32 at Benton. 5 turnovers by Benton in that game. 2 fumbles, 3 interceptions. Shiloh Christian's not getting 5 turnovers this week, and I think that was a big part of that win. Obviously both teams still 500 yards of offense, but yeah, Greenwood is just too good, and I think they win their 12th state championship on Saturday afternoon.
Hey, I got a question. Hey, if Greenwood goes ahead and finishes out, wins impressively, to me, the best team I've ever seen in high school, I've been doing this 40 years, with that 2005 Springdale team. Can this Greenwood team be comparable to that team?
Well, I think the difference is the state's largest classification. And, the argument is always, could Greenwood beat, let's say Bryant wins the 7A state title. Could Greenwood beat Bryant in a one-game playoff if they were to meet? Yes, they could.
I think they could too.
But could Greenwood go through a 7A schedule and play 7 games against those guys, plus 3 or 4 in the playoffs, and play a 2.5-month schedule against teams like that and played such physical ball? That's the question, because they lose a Cash Archer, they lose a Kane Archer, they lose a Grant Carnes, they lose a Champ Davis. They lose a Paul Brixey, who's having a fantastic year, the leading tackler on the team. That's what makes the difference between 7A and 6A. And don't forget, 18 years ago, the teams decided that they couldn't play those bottom 16 teams in the state's largest classification, threw up their hands, threw up the white flag, and said, we can't compete with those big teams.
Yep.
So if Bryant wins on Saturday night, I'll vote Bryant number 1 in the final poll. I'll vote Greenwood number 2. That's not Greenwood's fault. They weren't part of that when that happened 18 years ago, but still, there's a difference between 6A and 7A.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well done.
They were definitely a Class 5A team at that, or they were a 4A team when they split off like that.
Right. Now, would I love to see a Greenwood versus Bryant one-game playoff for the overall state title? Oh my, yeah, that would be fantastic. And could Greenwood win that game? Absolutely.
Gentlemen, let's remember Bryant still has to get by Bentonville first, so that will be our final pick of the podcast. Class 7A state championship, 6:30 on Saturday night. Bryant versus Bentonville. Bentonville Tigers have really come together. They've really made it interesting with a great win over Conway. Conway really, annihilated them early on, and they came back and won. Bentonville is going to have some confidence. They know that they can play with Bryant. Close ball game. I think Bryant wins it, though. Rick, who you got?
I think Bryant wins by at least a couple of touchdowns. I think that Bryant is that much better than all the other teams in 7A.
And Leland, who you got on this one?
Yeah, I've got to agree. Bryan is, I think, that much better, and they win by 2 touchdowns. But man, Bentonville, that first game, they gave up 55 points to Conway in September. But it's a different team now, and it's the playoffs. And like you said earlier, Graham, they've kind of righted the ship. They found out who they are. But man, Bryan has just been so dominant. You look over their stuff, and it's just Jordan Walker, 3-year starter at quarterback. They've got Myron Thrash and Daniel Anderson running backs that are just big, powerful running backs. I mean, Bryant does everything correctly. They have a passing game, they can run the ball, and they play tremendous defense. They're only allowing 12 points per game and only about 300 yards of offense per game. I think Bryant wins by 2 touchdowns. But I think Bentonville puts up a good fight.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's our Who You Got for this week. And that's going to bring us to the end of the Prep Rally podcast for this week. We'd like to thank our sponsor, West Termite Pest and Lawn. And, guys, I'm heading down to Little Rock. Leland, I'll see you there. And we'll see you again next week for another edition of Prep Rally. So for Rick Fires, for Leland Barclay in the River Valley, it's Graham Thomas signing off. We love you.